Hey everyone. So this week we're going to continue the saga of the Omega Blade. Chapter 3. After several more matches that were all fairly one-sided, they finally got to see something evenly matched when a Minotaur man named Grandak Thundereye faced a gold-skinned Dragonborn man named Thastek Tassin in unarmed combat. Despite goring his opponent once with each horn, Grandak was unable to land a fatal blow, and Thastek ended up ripping Grandak's throat out with his fangs. Once the body had been removed, Lux left the stands and the others wished her luck. Not wanting to be late for his own upcoming fight, Nefrius left the arena entirely, and Laeric went with him. Phaethira announced Lux, as she walked out wearing leather armor similar to what Kion had worn. Her longsword, the Sword of Freya, was enchanted to enhance her reflexes. Her shield, the Shield of Surtur, made her immune to all fire. "Facing the frozen warrior, Vanros Amberfist!" Phaethira exclaimed. The gate across from Lux opened, and a half-elf man walked out. Slightly shorter than Laeric, he had hazel eyes, bronze skin, and short, dirty blonde hair. He carried an 8-foot leather whip in one hand and a straight-bladed dagger in the other. "Our fighters have agreed to their weapons, so random selection will not be needed in that regard," Phaethira said. "All weapons may be enchanted. The requirements for victory will be death or forfeit. Do you both understand?" Lux gave her a thumbs up, and Vanros nodded. "Good. Begin!" Knowing the whip was only dangerous at the end, Lux rushed forward to get inside its range. Vanros swung the whip as he moved to engage her, and just before she was in range, the whip suddenly burst into green flames. In the stands, Val's eyes widened. He'd seen green fire before, and those unfortunate to get hit rarely survived. Lux stopped, wary of the burning whip, but then she remembered her shield's enchantment and resumed advancing. Confused, Vanros lashed out with his whip, but Lux was already too close. The burning leather hit her right arm, but the flames didn't spread to her. Panicking, Vanros threw his weapon to the ground. I yield, he shouted. Several members of the crowd voiced their disappointment, then cheered for Lux. Val and Aaron left the stands to meet her, and the three of them left the arena. As they were walking towards the main arena, Lux spotted Kion and two of her guards nearby. "You guys go on ahead," she said quickly. "I'll catch up." She walked away before they could respond. "Should we?" Val asked, his voice trailing off. "Go get seats," Aaron said. "I'll keep an eye on her." He kept walking towards the arena, and Aaron caught up with Lux just as she reached the princess. "Hello again, Luxia," Kion said, smiling. "Who's your Triton friend?" Aaron introduced herself, having stopped just behind Lux. "You must be the heir to the Frozen Throne." Kion nodded. "My older sister likes to think otherwise, but she knows what she did." "There's something I meant to ask you before," Lux said. "What type of arrowheads were you using in the arena?" "Mercury," Kion replied. "The only metal that melts in a warm body." Lux raised an eyebrow. "I thought mercury was only toxic if you drink or inhale it." "It is. That's why the arrowheads are hollow and filled with a different poison. In Captain Ironhoof's case, violet venom." "Smart." "Here's hoping neither of us has to fight you," Aaron chimed in. "Oh, I don't know," Kion said, her eyes fixed on Lux. "If you pinned me down and asked nicely, I could be convinced to forfeit." Aaron's eyes widened, but Lux was oblivious to the implication behind Kion's words. "There's a Dragonborn and a Dwarf up next in Arena 3, Kion said after a moment of silence. "I don't want to miss it." Lux nodded. "See you around." Aaron waited until the princess was out of sight before speaking up. "You know she was hitting on you, right?" Lux snorted. "Oh, yeah, I definitely noticed the princess of my kingdom flirting with me." Aaron gave her a knowing look. There was a pause. Then Lux's eyes widened. "Gods above, was she hitting on me?" By the time they reached Arena 1 and found the seats Val and Laeric were saving, Nefrius and his opponent were already facing off. Having grown up on a farm, Nefrius had learned to fight with tools he already knew how to use, a scythe and a pair of sickles. The scythe, which he called the Reaper, was 5 feet 8 inches long and had a slightly curved 4-foot blade. The sickles, which he called the Twins, were 30 inches long and had 2-foot blades that were nearly circular. He wore no armor, preferring maximum mobility. Nefrius' opponent was Lorena Moonwing, a bald, brown-skinned human woman with green eyes. She wore a chainmail shirt, was holding a 2-handed broadsword, and had a short sword and dagger strapped to her waist. The match started, and Lorena went on the offensive, trying to get inside the scythe's reach and end the fight quickly. Nefrius moved to the side, trying to keep his distance, but Lorena was quicker, and she managed to get inside his guard and disarm him of his scythe, though she wasn't able to land a hit on him. He suddenly broke into a run, confusing her. Reaching the opposite end of the arena, he turned to see her advancing on him. Pulling out his sickles, he threw one, which flew harmlessly over her shoulder and landed behind her. Lorena laughed, only to gasp in pain as the sickle flew up from the ground and embedded its blade in her back. She dropped to her knees, and Nephrius rushed forward and decapitated her. Leoric immediately began cheering, and most of the crowd soon followed. Nephrius rejoined the others, and they left to get food. Several hours later, Val, Aaron, Lux, and Nephrius were back in the stands. "Ladies, gentlemen," Arjun exclaimed, "I give you the only tiefling champion in the history of this tournament, Rodani!" A tiefling woman in her late 20s walked out. Her white skin had several scars, and she had red eyes and shoulder-length black hair. In her left hand, she carried a 3-foot shield with a dozen spikes, arranged in a circular pattern. In her right hand, she carried a one-handed axe with a 42-inch handle and a single crescent-shaped blade. She wore chainmail with several metal plates over the vital areas on her torso, as well as an iron helmet. "Facing the champ is a first-time participant and a former member of the infamous Elf Hunters," Arjun continued. "I give you Vanga the Merciless!" An orc woman in her mid-30s walked out. Standing over half a foot taller than her tiefling opponent, she had orange eyes, sage-green skin, and short brown hair. She carried a circular shield measuring 4 feet across and a spiked flail with a 6-foot chain. She wore a full set of plate armor that sacrificed some protection for increased mobility. The chestplate had an unusual design painted on it in black. "What is that design?" Aaron asked, squinting. "Tally marks," Nephrius replied. "I saw her when I was waiting for my fight to start. Before you ask, 43. Our fighters have agreed on 1 weapon, 1 enchantment," Arjun explained. "The requirements for victory will be death or forfeit. Do you both understand?" Both women gave him a thumbs up. "Then may the best fighter win!" Vanga began swinging her flail in circles, immediately revealing her weapon's enchantment when the chain passed through her body as though she wasn't even there. She and Rodani slowly advanced on each other, and when they were around 15 feet apart, one of the spikes on the tiefling's shield was suddenly fired as a projectile. Rodani's aim was slightly off, and the spike only grazed Vanga's right shoulder. In the spot on the shield where the spike had been, a new one had already begun slowly forming. Vanga blocked 2 more spikes with her shield as she rushed forward, still swinging her flail. She stuck to horizontal circles around her body, but once she was actually in range, she altered the spike ball's trajectory, swinging it up and over the back of her head and bringing it down on her opponent. Rodani dodged left, narrowly avoiding serious facial damage. She tried to get inside the flail's reach, but Vanga was too fast, pulling the flail back and swinging it around her again. Deciding to play it safe, Rodani moved back and fired another spike. Vanga failed to block it, but it bounced harmlessly off her chestplate and embedded itself in the ground. It started to rain as Vanga advanced, and Rodani continued moving back and firing spikes. Most were stopped by Vanga's shield and armor. One was inexplicably intercepted by the flail's spiked ball, and one grazed the left side of Vanga's neck but failed to hit a vein or artery. With all her spikes gone and her shield regrowing them too slowly to make a difference, Rodani was forced to take a completely defensive approach. It worked at first, but then Vanga started swinging her flail clockwise instead of counterclockwise. Rodani tried to dodge, but Vanga's spiked ball finally made contact, breaking the tiefling's right arm. Before Rodani could stop yelling long enough to yield, Vanga's next strike caved in the right side of her helmet and skull. "Gods above!" Arjun blurted out. "Our winner is Vanga the Merciless!" Most of the crowd cheered, with the orcs especially vocal. Rodani's body was removed, and after a short break, Arjun began speaking again. "For our final fight of the day, I present Theramir, the runner-up in last year's Dawnhill Games." A half-orc man emerged from the left gate. Standing as tall as Val, he had brown skin, yellow eyes, and short black hair. He was missing his left tusk, carried a strange-looking crossbow, and had a scimitar and short mace on his belt. He was wearing full leather armor and an iron helmet. "His opponent first participated in these games 8 years ago," Arjun continued. "I give you Leoric Swiftguard." Leoric walked out armed with his bow, a 4-foot broadsword, and a 6-inch dagger. Like Kion that morning, he had a dozen arrows in his quiver. He wore a steel chestplate and helmet, but left his arms and legs exposed for better mobility. "Random selection has determined that our fighters will be allowed 3 weapons, no enchantments," Arjun explained. "The requirements for victory will be death, incapacitation, or forfeit. Do you both understand?" "Yes," Theramir shouted. Leoric simply nodded. "Then, by all means, fight!" Both men advanced on each other. Leoric fired the first shot, but his arrow bounced off Theramir's helmet. His second arrow missed, and his third and fourth both got stuck in his opponent's leather armor. Based on Theramir's reactions, the fourth arrow penetrated the armor just enough to hurt. Theramir's crossbow had a wooden box over the bowstring, no obvious trigger mechanism, and a horizontal handle above the stock. Before Leoric could fire a 5th arrow, Theramir stopped moving, grabbed the handle, and pulled it down. That fired a bolt, which missed Leoric by over a foot but still made him stop in his tracks. Theramir raised and lowered the handle, firing a second bolt, and Leoric leaped to the side to avoid getting hit. Realizing the crossbow was a repeater, something he'd heard of but dismissed as absurd, Leoric turned and ran. 3 bolts bounced off the back of his chest plate and 3 more missed entirely. One hit Leoric's left thigh and he stumbled and fell, losing his remaining arrows as the 10th bolt flew harmlessly over him. Looking at his leg, he saw that the bolt had pierced his muscle tissue but missed bone. Gritting his teeth, he broke the shaft and pulled it out, yelling in pain as he did. Seeing that Theramir had drawn his scimitar and mace, Leoric tried to get up, only to yell in pain when his left leg wouldn't support his weight. Breathing deeply, he pulled out his dagger and waited. Once Theramir was close enough, Leoric threw the dagger, hitting the half-orc in the throat. Theramir's eyes widened, and he dropped to his knees before falling on his face. After being treated by a cleric, Leoric joined his friends as they waited for the rain to stop. While they were waiting, they heard a woman complaining in Orcish. Then Venga the Merciless pushed through the crowd and walked out into the rain. Now she has 44 tally marks, Nefrius remarked. Spotting Arcadius, Erin made her way over to him. Hey, is there any way I could get my hands on a large metal tub? Arcadius blinked. For what, a bath? She shook her head. No, I can go out in the rain for that. It's to sleep in. I beg your pardon? Erin pulled on the neck of her shirt, revealing her gills. Ah, I see, he said. Let me see what we have. There should be one large enough to accommodate you. That would be wonderful. Thank you. So ends Chapter 3. That's all for now. Stay safe in these crazy times.